Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, a record number of female MPs to enter the Turkish parliament following this month's poll. Also, Saudi women gear up to vote for the very first time in the country's municipal elections. And how 90 has become the new 60. We meet the world's oldest primary schoolgirl who's 94 and lives in Kenya. But we begin in Turkey. He will now have the largest number of women in parliament. It follows the success of the pro-Kurdish, pro-gay People's Democratic Party, better known as HDP, in the recent election. The party, jointly led by a man and a woman, demanded 50% of its candidates be female. Delana D'Souza has the story.
There's a new power at play in Turkish politics, and it's happened 81 years after women got the right to stand for election. The new pro-Kurdish party, the HDP, made significant gains in recent polls. They've pledged to adopt laws to bring an end to forced marriages and sexism in the workplace.
Kurdish parties traditionally have politics of equality. They're usually leftist, and so they defend their feminist positions, which aren't in tandem with the way things are in the southeast, where women's rights aren't the best. But they have equal numbers of men and women, so we'll have more women MPs from the HDP party, and that's important in modernising the political scene, given that the AKP party have very conservative views on the place of women in society.
When the AKP party came to power in 2002, it did so on the promise of improving women's rights. Turkey was trying to join the European Union at the time, and the move was likely designed to win favour with the bloc. But since then, the party has gone back on its word. The government of Recep Tayyip Erdogan began relaxing rules on allowing veiled MPs into parliament, toughening laws on abortion, and coming out with sexist views.
Our religion, Islam, has given a position to women. What is that position? The position of motherhood. You cannot put women and men on an equal footing. It is against nature. They were created differently. Their nature is different. Their constitution is different.
Under Erdogan's rule, the situation of women in Turkey has worsened. One study estimates 40% of the female population have been physically abused at least once in their lives. Earlier this year, a group of men led a pro-women demonstration in the country, ditching their trousers and taking to the streets.
Now to Saudi Arabia, where women are being allowed to vote for the very first time in municipal elections that are scheduled for later this year. However, they won't be able to drive to the polling booth since women are still forbidden from being behind the wheel. The new electoral law was passed by King Abdullah before his death, so the world is waiting to see if his successor, King Salman, will continue his father's gradual reforms of women's rights. And in the last few days, there are reports that the country is also considering plans to lift restrictions on women travelling without a man's permission. For more on this story, I'm joined now by Jane Kinimont, a Saudi specialist from Chatham House in London. Jane, thanks for being with us. In regards to the right to vote in local elections, just how significant a win is this for the women's movement in Saudi Arabia?
It's really significant in terms of equality before the law. It's not necessarily going to have a huge political impact because these local councils have got limited powers, and we've seen in the last couple of times that they've had elections with only men voting that actually public interest in voting has been quite low, turnout has been quite low. So it's not going to lead to very dramatic changes, but it is a very important symbolic step forward.
It does appear that the Saudi government is implementing a series of gradual reforms. So just how much has life actually changed for women in Saudi Arabia?
The biggest change for women in Saudi Arabia has been in the realm of education. There's been a very dramatic expansion of education opportunities for women over the past generation, but particularly over the past 10 years. So now you're seeing most university students in Saudi Arabia are female, and importantly, women are getting the best degrees. These educated women run up against all kinds of social and legal restrictions when it comes to, for example, entering the workforce and developing their career. But it does mean you have a generation of women who are more able to push for their rights. That said, many of them are very traditional, conservative, and religious-minded people themselves. So, for example, it may be hard for Westerners to understand, but some of the opposition to women driving comes from women. There are women who say, I don't want to drive and I wouldn't let my daughter do it either.
So, Jane, why is that the case?
This is a very religiously conservative country. Very few non-Muslim visitors are actually allowed in. You cannot really go to Saudi Arabia as a tourist unless you're going as a religious pilgrim. There are business people who go into the major business capitals, but many Saudis live in rural areas where they don't interact much with the rest of the world, they don't meet many foreigners, and they have quite a traditional way of life. A lot of it is rooted in traditional tribal customs which affect their interpretation of Islam, because it should be noted not a single other Muslim country in the world bars women from driving. But there is that very strong conservative heartland that is quite resistant to change and resistant to what they might see as westernisation.
So what other reforms are being considered by the government?
Well, the issue of women driving is probably going to be one of the last things on the agenda, but rather the government is continuing to look at the key issue of women's employment and economic empowerment. And that's for some very practical reasons. Saudi Arabia is a rich country, but it's got a big population and a rising cost of living. And so the traditional lifestyle of having only a male breadwinner isn't actually sustainable for many families. You've got these more educated women. They're also feeling a need to work. And they find that there are a lot of occupations that are either legally or in practice close to women. And so many of the discussions now are about how to get more women really working and being a more productive contributor to the economy.
Now, Jane, as you were just saying there, clearly there's a growing number of highly educated women in the country. So just how long can the status quo actually remain?
The status quo is changing and it's being contested, but it's not necessarily the picture of continuous, smooth, gradual reforms that the Saudi authorities would like to portray. Rather, it's something a lot messier. For many of these educated women, they're really seeking to build some kind of consensus in a society that can be quite divided over what makes a devout Muslim, for example. So they will focus heavily on issues such as women's employment and maybe talk about the need for them to get transport, such as being able to drive so that they can work in very practical terms. The issues around women's dress, women's role in the family and society, these issues can be much more divisive and may well take much longer to resolve.
Jane Kinnamon, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Now, as we've reported before, Latin America is home to some of the most restrictive abortion laws in the world. In Brazil, a termination can only be legally performed if the pregnancy puts the life of the woman in danger, or if it's the result of a rape, or when the fetus's brain cannot develop. As a result, activists estimate each year hundreds of thousands of women seek out clandestine abortions. France 24's Mark Perelman recently asked the country's president, Dilma Rousseff, her views on the subject.
I believe that Brazil today will be entering into a long process, an evolution of the situation. If you did a survey today, it might be that all women would not support this position. I believe that it is a matter in which the state should not intervene. The federal state should not intervene in this. We should keep for ourselves what we believe and not enter into that debate.
Finally, is it the case of 90 being the new 60? Earlier this month, a 92-year-old cancer survivor entered the record books by becoming the oldest woman to finish a marathon. Harriet Thompson of Charlotte, North Carolina, completed the marathon in San Diego in 7 hours, 24 minutes and 36 seconds. In the meantime, in Kenya, a 94-year-old woman has decided to go back to school. Duncan Woodside and Capucine Diane went to meet the world's oldest primary school pupil in the west of Kenya.
This may look like a typical scene from a school in rural Kenya, but this classroom has a very unusual student. Meet Priscilla, aka Gogo, 94 years old.
So, 2 classes is 8.
Gogo has been coming to classes here for the past 5 years. Sitting alongside her grandchildren, she's determined to provide an example for the youngsters within her community.
I've come to school because I've seen many young people stay at home without a job, and I often ask them, why are you not at school? Their response is usually, oh, I'm scared to go.
Gogo gets involved in all school activities, even physical education. But believe it or not, she's having a bad day.
I like PE, but today I'm sick with malaria. But I feel a bit better than I did yesterday.
Gogo struggles at times due to poor hearing and failing eyesight, but she is determined not to be left behind.
There's a time she came and told me that I'm really trying to get what the teacher is teaching in class. But I'm not getting, the teacher is not attending to me very well.
A traditional midwife, Gogo wants her education to advance her career.
When I finish school, I want to be a doctor. I want to improve my technique of being a midwife so I can better take care of babies.
As a result, she takes her homework seriously, but she still has 3 years to go before she receives her primary school certificate.
An amazing woman, and that's it for now. And if you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page. That's France24, the 51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and please keep those comments coming in. Until our next program, bye for now.